I'm Kelly with DNNDev.com. In a previous video, we created a data-bound form that allowed us to add and edit book listings in the database. If you haven't viewed that video yet, you may want to do so before continuing. We'll be building on the work we did there. In this video, we'll enhance our form by adding picker lists. They're a feature that is common to many data entry forms. For instance, in an order form, you'd be able to select from a list of states or regions. When filling in my shipping address, for example, I'd be able to select Arizona from a list of states. These picker lists are usually populated with data stored in the database, allowing them to be managed separately from the order form. Picker lists can make our form more user-friendly and reduce data entry errors. Specifically, we'll be modifying the author and genre controls so that the user can select appropriate values from a predefined list of items. Let's get started. First, click to edit the books form we created earlier. To bind controls to the data source, we use the controlled data source control. This is a special hidden control that will handle populating our drop-down lists with data from the database. Each controlled data source is responsible for retrieving one set of data. That data can come from a database table or a database view. That data can then be shared by multiple controls on our form. You can also add multiple controlled data sources to the form, retrieving different data sets, as we'll do here. Let's add a data source we'll use to display a list of authors. You'll find the controlled data source in the control picker's Other category. Defining the data source is a simple process. Give the control an ID. This is important because we'll need to refer to this ID to link our controls to the data source later on. Next, we can choose where our data comes from, the .NET Nuke database or an external SQL Server database. If we select the latter, we just supply a connection string. However, our data is coming from a view I've created in the .NET Nuke database, so I'll select that option. And then select the author's view. Once I've done that, the form builder will retrieve a list of columns to choose from. Typically, we'll only want to retrieve one or two columns unless we're sharing this data source with multiple controls that need access to other columns. Simply hold down the control key and click each column to select or deselect it. For this view, there are only two columns we can choose from, and we'll select both of them. Next, click Apply to add the control to the form. The second part of the process is creating a control to fill with the data. To do so, we need to delete our existing author control and replace it with a drop-down list. As we would with any control, we need to give the control an ID, a label, and assign it to a field in our database. Now go to the control data source property and select the author's data source we just created. We're given the opportunity to select a column in our data source to use as a display text in our control and a column to use for the control's hidden value. For our purposes, we want to select the full name for the data text field and leave the data value field set to author ID. Note that when the form is submitted, the hidden value, the author ID in this case, will be stored in the database, not the display text. Go ahead and click Apply to add the control to our form. You can see here that the controlled data source has been added to the form canvas. It won't be visible at runtime, but is listed here so we can see the control's ID and the columns being retrieved. Let's move the author drop-down list we just created up to its proper position. Now let's repeat the process for the genre control. First, delete the existing genre text box. Next, add a new control data source. Give it an ID of DS genres. And with .NET Nuke Database selected as the data source, select books_genres. As we did before, we'll select both the genre ID and genre name, and click Apply to add it to the form. Now we need to add our drop-down list for the genre. Give it an ID of genre, a label of genre, assign it to the genre ID data field, and select the genres data source we just created from the control data source drop-down list. Finally, select the genre name for the data text field, and leave data value field to genre ID. Click Apply to add the drop-down list to our form, and move it into position. That's all we need to do. Just click Update Form and we'll preview it. As you can see here, we've replaced the author text box from before with a drop-down list that has been populated with authors in our database table. And the same goes for the genre text box, now a drop-down list with all of the genres in our tables. And there you have it, very quick and easy, point and click to bind your drop-down lists to views and tables in your database. Thanks for watching.